Hey everyone, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here, hello, and welcome to the show. First, please buy a t-shirt. Go to That Pedal Show store, buy stuff. It's how we fund this show, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Indeed. Parallel.
Oh, subscribe as well.
Oh, so do that as well.
Yeah, it helps, believe it or not.
Yeah.
The YouTube monkeys love it. Yeah, okay, sorry, I really interrupted you, Dan.
It's all right.
Parallel overdrives.
Parallel.
We got asked to do this. We were doing a VCQ last night, and somebody came on and said, what about parallel overdrives? And we've spoken about it a little bit in the past, but never really done a whole show on it, I don't think.
Yeah. There are a number of overdrive pedals that can do this, but we thought what we want to do is take you through the concept so that you understand it and what's going on, and how much fun it can be, because there's some epic tones to be discovered, I believe.
Yeah, so right from the top, then, the difference between series and parallel, as briefly as possible, is...
Okay, in series, you have one pedal after another. The signal from that pedal is going directly into the signal to the pedal after it, and so forth and so on.
Which is how 99.9% of us set our pedal boards up. The guitar goes in that end, it goes out to the amp that end, and everything in between is in series, pretty much.
Indeed, indeed. The parallel signal path, parallele, it basically, at some point, the signal is split. So from there, that signal goes to the inputs of, say, two pedals, and that is then run along in parallel. They either get joined up or they go out to separate amplifiers. But the most important thing is the inputs of the pedals are seeing the same signal.
Yeah. Can we just do a very basic demonstration of that right from the off then? So you've got two green overdrives there.
Yes.
A tube screamer and an ODR-1.
Indeed.
What we'll hear in the next example is the two pedals in series, and then we'll hear them in parallel.
Indeed.
Is that cool?
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So we've got two amps today.
I wonder what the settings are.
The always glorious Deluxe Reverb, and the always even more gloriouser Two-Rock TS1.
We've chosen those amps for a very specific purpose, which we'll get into following this demonstration. Should we start in series then?
So we'll start in series. So
they're both off.
both off.
Why can't we hear anything?
Because you've turned down the output of the first pedal.
Right, keep going.
So there's, yeah.
Why can't we hear anything?
Because you've turned down the output of the second pedal.
Can you put them in parallel?
Indeed. So that's series, and so this is now parallel.
So again, without any pedals, just for a second. Just to make it as simple as possible, done exactly the same thing we did when they were in series, but now, because the signal path is arranged as you'll see it on screen, turning down one or other of the pedals doesn't get rid of the whole sound, because now we're blending them.
Exactly.
I'll just keep going. was I doing there?
So you're changing the levels and then you turn them on and off. So the interesting thing with the parallel is when you change the levels, you're mixing one pedal in with the other. When you turn them off, you've got the bypass signal.
Still
so you've
going.
got clean on one side,
Yeah.
and then you still got the other pedal. So yeah.
The point being, you've got this massive gamut of extra tones that you didn't have with them in series.
Exactly that.
Because the relative order of the two pedals is having a massive effect on the tone, the resultant tone.
Mm-hmm.
You'll know this if you've got two favourite overdrive pedals, take an overdrive and a boost, for example, just swap them round in the opposite direction, one first, then the other, and you'll discover that the resultant tone is vastly different,
Indeed.
depending on the order.
Yeah. And depending on the gain structure of the pedal, right? Depending on how they're set.
Yeah.
If one's a bit cleaner and that goes at the front, it'll sound very different if it's cleaner, it goes at the end.
So before we move on, and Dan explains it a bit more in detail and we get into some of these other pedals and some other examples of the kind of things you can do, it's probably worth mentioning, now I don't know this for a fact, but it's a reasonable assumption that maybe this sort of approach came from two possible sources. One might be people who use 2 amps, and we can count among our friends. Phil X is a good example of this.
Great example of this.
They go for honk lovers. Our friend Paul Stacey is another good example of this. Two people among many great players who like to use 1 amp for one job and then switch in the other amp or always have it switched in for a different job. Joe Bonamassa.
Great example.
For those of you who don't know, we honk the horn when it's people that we have met.
Very strict rules around the down drop horn.
Because we love to drop a name, right? Bonamassa will do it. He has his Marshall Silver Jubilees usually in his main rig, running a sort of core overdrive sound with top and bottom frequencies, and then he switches in any combination of other amps. Might be a Tweed, might be a Dumble, might be something else to do his punch in mid-range. So we're going to recreate that slightly here. We're going to crank up the Deluxe Reverb so that it gets into overdrive. Those of you who don't know that Deluxe Reverbs go into overdrive, they really do, and it's a really glorious sound.
Sure is.
And we'll switch over to the overdrive channel in the TS1 and kind of switch them on and off so you can hear the combination of 2 amps. And what you're hearing here is 2 amps in parallel, right? Because one of them isn't going into the other, they're happening at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mentioned that might be from 2 sources. The other source is from studios, from recording studios, where most things you hear will be in parallel, not in series. So added effects, additional gain staging, it will tend to be in parallel mixed in rather than straight series.
Yeah, very, very nice. Very nice. On the bus, as it were.
Yes, because we like being on the bus, Dan.
The knobs on the bus go round and round, Mick.
And enjoy this for a moment. Here's a Deluxe Reverb for you then.
Stick a fork in me, I'm done. That is outrageous.
That's our Deluxe on 7.5, and what we like about that is it's not really any louder than it is on 4.5. It's just more distorted.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll set the TS1 up a minute for an overdriven sound. This will be, oops, hang on, wrong switch. This will be slightly harder to deal with because it is infinitely louder than the Deluxe Reverb, but let's go.
Oh, man. That is an experience. I don't think I've ever done that before.
It's a very brief demonstration, and to be honest, the TS1 wasn't happening there. It hadn't dialed it in.
Right.
I promise you, other days it sounds much better than that. And also for the kind of stuff that Dan was playing, chugging away on chords there, I think where you really hear it is when you start to get into single notes. The Deluxe Reverb doesn't have the kind of mid-push in the way that a more powerful amp does with those mid-frequencies.
Okay.
So really that's just a way of going, there's nothing really new about what we're talking about here. It's in the old days when, I don't know, Jimmy Page might have had his Marshall and whatever he had his theremin going through, and then some other things, you know, Stevie Ray's multiple amps. Great players down the years usually run more than one amp to get a mixture of things going on. 4, the difference in the gain texture. So both of those were fairly overdriving. It might be that you have one really overdriven and one less. And for the EQ.
Yeah. And that's the big thing, right? Because every amp has got its own character. And this is one of the amazing things about parallel. I don't know exactly why this works, but for me, if I've got a pedal that I love the bottom end thump on it, and I've got a pedal that I love the top and mid range, when I put them together, it's not the bottom end of the one that I don't like and the top end of the one I don't like. It always has the bottom end of the one I love. And the mid and top of the one I love. Yeah. Right? They just sort of, the way they come together, the things you love about them sort of come to the fore. Yeah.
Just to get an extra harmonically rich sound that you enjoy. Now, it's worth saying, from here on in, you're going to be hearing both amps. And it might be that we do them dual mono at some point, so you hear different pedals coming out of different amps. But really, everything we're going to talk about from now on is if you were using one amp and you wanted to do that blending job, essentially, with a couple of pedals rather than with a couple of amps, because on a practical point, Bonamassa, Phil X, Paul Stacey, they can all get away with taking multiple amps to gigs and cranking them and getting those tones. Most of the rest of us don't really have that luxury, so we need to find another way.
Indeed. Yeah.
Fair?
Very fair.
Let's get these levels set back up again, Dan, just to make sure that I haven't messed anything up too much.
It's such a beautiful sound, those two amps together.
It works.
Far out, man.
They are complementary. Should we need to further underline the point of having two things in parallel?
Yeah, indeed.
All right. Where do we go from here?
Okay. So what I want to do just quickly is I want to re-familiarize ourselves with the sound of the pedals. We've got 5. Well, there's more than 5, but we've got the EP Booster, the TS9, the Nobels ODR-1, the Rat, and the Big Muff. These are sounds that we are more or less familiar with. If you play for a bit, we'll get this is the Lester just on its Todd into the 2 amps. bit of
What was all that about?
bit of stereo delay and reverb on there just to, and the stereo thing will become important in a minute.
I was using the wrong plectrum. What the hell was going on there then?
Just all we were doing in series was just going through the pedals one at a time.
Oh, so you only were ever hearing one?
Absolutely.
One
Only ever
pedal.
hearing one pedal.
There was something that was flipping great there, where I was hitting and it was just sustained city.
Oh, I had the EP Booster and the Big Muff just for one moment because I
okay.
just wanted to hear it. But that was a selfish thing.
All right.
But so
I love this guitar.
it's so good. It is. Yeah. It's as good as any Lester I've ever played.
I played a couple recently.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, sorry.
Anyway, so yes, there's our tangent, tangent box tick for the show.
Paul Stacey's new one makes this sound
Yes. Okay.
not quite so glorious.
All right.
Anyway,
So, sounds that we're very familiar with, right? We've got the color and the boost of the EP. We've got that mid-range push of the Ibanez TS9. We've got that fat sizzle of the ODR-1. We've got the distorted like mids and
the sharp teeth and whippy tail
of the
Rat.
very good. And you can do the Big Muff then.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's the sound of Mike Matthews smoking a cigar.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of those big wet stogies. Anyway, the Big Muff is, absolutely massive thing. So what we can do now is we can pick these pedals that we want to hear in parallel with each other. So I think, pick two of the furthest apart that you can think of.
Well, the EP Boost and the Muff, isn't it?
The EP Boost and the Muff.
And by furthest apart, Dan means probably two things, and I apologise for
It's all right.
putting words into your visage, Daniel. EQ and gain level.
Yeah.
Yeah, so is one very clean and one very distorted, one very mid-focused, one very mid-scooped.
Yeah.
Very bassy, very trebly, different ends of the scale.
Indeed. So
Sorry to be so simplistic. This is an interesting plectrum. What do you think of that?
no, can't. No thanks. That's a pass from me. I'm out. Okay. So the way this is going to work, we are splitting the signal before the pedals. Then we're going to go through the pedals, and then we're joining the signal after the pedals. So both amplifiers are going to be receiving the same signal. Okay, we can demonstrate that in a
we're
bit.
using 2 amps because we like 2 amps, but you'd get the same result into 1 amp.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The 2 amps will become also more important later on. But for now, both amps are going to be receiving the same signal. So if we're going to try the EP Booster and the Big Muff.
If you are screaming at the screen at this moment, how on earth do you split it and sum it again? We're doing all of that in G3. These two things are on here because you can do it with these two things. We will come back to that.
Absolutely.
Just
There are other ways to do this,
Yeah.
but for the demonstration, so we can get through it and just show you the concepts, we're just doing it all in here. Okay, so I think we've come to our first issue that you might have when you're joining your gain stages. So think about it like this. We're splitting the signal. We're going into 2 gain stages, and then we're summing them at the end. What's a possible problem that might happen if you're going through 2 separate gain stages?
We've got twice the level.
Normally you would have twice the level, but if you're not getting quite twice the level, what might be happening on one side?
Oh, I see. We've got a phase problem.
We have a phase problem.
I didn't even pick that up.
So as I was blending in the Big Muff, as I took it out, you could hear the EP get louder. As I blended in, it got quieter.
Oh, interesting.
Until the Big Muff got considerably louder.
I was too busy being rock and roll, Dan.
And it sounded really good. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to flip the phase,
Yeah.
just so that we can hear the difference.
Okay, I'll try and play something
2
less angular so that you can hear this clearly.
All right. So now I've flipped the phase. So let's see what happens now.
So I was deliberately trying to keep a lot of low end in the sound because that's where you hear the phase most obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's one thing to be aware of. It might happen one times in 5, with your gain stages. But if you do have a gain stage, like the EP Booster is known for.
Oh, so it's flips phase in and out.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that particular circuit does it, but original EP Booster circuit does flip phase.
As a brief tangent, it's not uncommon if you find things in pedals that have something like internal dip switches for things like trails and Drew bypass, or on the EP's case, it's got internal switches for different EQ states. Mm-hmm. It's not uncommon when one of those is flipped to be for the whole pedal to be flip phase, especially in trails and true bypass modes. Yeah. That can quite often be a phase flipper.
Yeah.
To be aware of.
But what you're after really is that when the pedals combine in parallel and then you join at the end, you're going to get twice the amount of signal.
Yeah.
Right? So it's one thing to be aware of. If you hear a drop, then there's a good chance that one of those is out of phase.
If it gets weaker, basically, when you put the other pedal on.
Yeah. So I want to hear the tube screamer in the Big Muff.
Okay.
Right? Because the Big Muff it's all sizzle and fatness.
Yep.
And I want to hear what happens with the mid-range of the tube screamer.
Okay. Will you play then?
So there you go, yeah, TS9 L Muffo.
And we're in parallel, yeah?
We're in parallel.
Okay. genuinely thought the TS wasn't working for a minute.
Right.
It's so different from my other tube screamers. So you have to, all my other ones have got more gain than that.
Oh, okay.
And actually, as you turn the volume up, it got gainier too.
Right.
So we started off with a Big Muff, like Dan asked, and the Big Muff is known as being quite mid-scoopy. Actually, that one's not super mid-scoopy, straight into that amp, which has got loads of mid. So I wasn't missing loads of mid-range.
Okay. There is a tone switch on the back that puts the tone control back in. So maybe that might give it that big muffy scoopy thing. Yeah, all right.
That was the Big Muff sound I was expecting to hear. Go for it.
Okay.
It is slightly weird because, as Dan said earlier, when I just switch the Tube Screamer out there, you're getting the dry signal of the guitar. So you're getting Big Muff and clean, which could be exactly what you're looking for, but seems a bit odd. Yeah, much more noticeable there. So we took all the mid-range out of the Big Muff, we added it back in with the TS, and it becomes a shaping device.
Yeah.
Now, how much of a hassle is it just to hear that in series for a second?
No, no problem.
So I haven't changed anything on the pedals. Here is what happens if you hit the front of the Big Muff with the Tube Screamer. Now, you might not particularly love either of those sounds. The point is that they were very different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the last thing we'll look at quickly, let's do some cleaner tones, because that's like a cacophony of noise, which is really fun.
I'm really interested in seeing what the ODR-1 and the Tube Screamer can do with a Strat, for example, because there's things I love about both pedals
Do it.
for Strat. I'm just wondering if we could achieve a best of both worlds,
Let's do
maybe?
it. Yep, absolutely.
If only I had a nice Strat, Dan.
If only. You have to put up with that old
Piece
thing.
of junk. That's the Tube Screamer I know and love.
Beautiful.
Okay.
So good. Okay. ODR-1.
Sorry, I could just keep playing that all day. Extended bottom end. The
Yeah.
first thing I noticed was how much more bottom end there was compared to the TS. Could you just demonstrate that briefly? I'll just play the bottom string, listen to the bass response.
So now we're going to hear them in parallel, right? We heard them in series.
That was
there.
series, was it?
We had just heard them in series.
Yeah, apologies.
It's all right.
I'm enjoying it too much.
Just had to add a bit of flying move on there because
Sorry for wigging out there.
isn't that great?
What a thoroughly enjoyable sound.
Yeah. So
In a massive way.
and you've got the best of both worlds there. But did you hear when we went to parallel, suddenly it got twice as loud because the signals were summing and lifting everything up. When we were in series, it was just gain into gain,
Yeah.
making it really squashy.
Maybe. Sorry, do you finish?
Yeah.
The thing that came to mind to me there was sometimes if you're used to gain stacking, it can be a really glorious thing. You get like a couple of overdrives and set them relatively low, and the extra harmonic interest you get out of two low gain pedals stacked can be really fun. As soon as you start upping those gains, exactly what you just said happens. It gets quieter, it caves in on itself.
Yep.
It starts to lose some of that harmonic interest and starts becoming squashy and compressed. That was the absolute reverse of that. I felt like there was dynamic. There was, if I picked harder, it got louder, but there wasn't any shortage of sustain.
Yeah.
Again, maybe because it's a bit louder, but yeah, that was
Sounded amazing.
really nice, man.
Yeah, sounded amazing. One thing I am going to quickly say, just to be aware of when you are splitting the signal. At the moment, we're doing it passively, right? We're literally splitting the signal passively and we're going...
Sorry, of course, but...
we're going into both inputs. Now, both inputs have an impedance,
Okay.
right? And when you're splitting it passively and you're going to both inputs, you're basically doubling that input impedance. So it's often not an issue because these pedals that we're dealing with have a very high input impedance.
Right.
So, we're actually halving the input impedance because we're doing it parallel. But one thing most splitters will do is they will buffer the signal so that you're not putting extra load onto the guitar. So what I'm going to do
So just to talk that through a second, if the guitar is seeing the impedance of both...
the guitar has to drive the impedance of both pedals at the same time.
The potential is you could lose some top end basically quite quickly on single coils, well, and humbuckers for that matter.
Depending on the input impedance of the pedals you're driving.
Yeah, right.
So these are quite high. So it's really not going to have a problem that driving those pedals. But what I'll do, just so you can hear, I'm just going to kick a buffer on.
Yeah.
So
Play.
and see if you can. You play, and then just so that you can hear.
Okay.
Hear the difference. Okay.
Try some position 2 for a bit of fun. Just for the record, my pickups are not RWRP, so it does hum like a banshee.
But it's beautiful.
Turn it off and on, and I'm going to tell you which one I prefer.
Okay.
It's really subtle. One of the settings had more harmonics,
Okay.
and I think it was with the buffer off.
Right. There's a couple of times you said not that one, and that was with the buffer on.
Yeah.
So, and what's really interesting, right? If we now go back to series,
Yeah.
and we just go to the ODR-1, for example,
Yeah.
do the same thing.
Is that with the buffer on?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I can hear the buffer there.
Yeah.
That's mad. The buffering effect is more obvious in the increased high end.
Yeah. And again, it depends on the pedal
Yeah.
that you're going into. But yeah, so it's just one of those things to be aware of.
Buffers.
Yeah, but some, if we had, if we were splitting that signal 4 ways.
Oh mate, I've definitely on a minor tangent, I've definitely come to love a buffer for a certain thing.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So sometimes that,
Yeah.
they're great. But yeah, that's just one thing to be aware of. So the last thing we're going to have a look at, now is what we've been doing up to this point is we've been splitting the signal, going through the pedals, manipulating those pedals, setting up and down, getting the sound we like, and then joining them, setting to both amplifiers. What we're going to do now is we're going to split the signal, go through the pedals, and then we're going to send them to their own amp.
Different pedals in different amps.
Different pedals into a different amp.
So this kind of brings us back to the top of the show where we said maybe one of the origins of this is using 2 amps for 2 different things. We're now going to do that again, but add different pedals into those different amps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we take that sound we just had, which was beautiful, the parallel thing,
Yeah.
but instead of summing them going to both amplifiers, let's hear them into one pedal into each amp.
Okay.
Okay? So as we were,
I'm just going to put up with the hum.
okay.
I'm sorry, I appreciate it. It's very rude for me to turn my back to you. For those of you who might not be aware, RF happens in a 360-degree cycle, so there will be one point in the 360 degrees, well 2 actually, but one particularly that will get rid of the hum.
So let's just hear the 2-rock for a sec. Tube screamer into the 2-rock.
Middly pedal into middly amp.
Yeah. Okay. Now we'll hear the ODR-1 into the deluxe reverb.
Much more balanced.
Much more balanced. So now if we hear TS9 into the 2-rock, ODR-1 into the deluxe reverb. And
That was great.
so the reason that we did the stereo reverb and delay so that each signal could go through its own reverb and delay and go out to each amplifier. So that's why the stereo thing was important,
Because the collider is true stereo.
because the collider is true stereo and true analog drive-through as well. So this is just a little taste. Like there's a bunch of different ways that you can do this, right? This was just to go through all the possible permutations, the downfalls, like with the phase and that sort of stuff, being able to join it, being able to split it. There are pedals that do this internally. So the Yankee Driver, which is the collaboration between JHS and Boss, has a parallel 2 distortion circuits with a parallel mode in there that you can blend them in. But then you've got the Brothers by Chase Bliss. You've got the
Multi-drive,
by Empress.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of pedals that if what you're interested in is just getting some different drive sounds and getting them into parallel, it's really, really cool. And there are pedals that do that. But the idea is that, and hopefully this has shown you that with pedals that you know the sound of, actually by a little bit of manipulation, by having them in their own things, what you can get is truly inspiring.
It's really cool. Just to reiterate, throughout this video, G3 has been doing all the splitting and joining, and it's very clever because it can split and join in different places, hence all the things we've been able to do. The on-screen diagrams will have made it clear. The reason, I mentioned this briefly earlier, but let's mention it again. This is a splitter, as you can see, split. This is a sum, as you can see, a little calculator there does sums. So you'd basically plug your guitar in here.
Yep.
You'd go out of those 2 little triangles out to your 2 different lines of distortion boxes. You would then come in to these 2 little triangles, which would sum the signal again. Again, there'll be a diagram on screen that's explaining this. And you go out singularly to your single amp.
Indeed. Indeed.
So if you didn't want to do that, you could literally go in there, out to your 2 distortion boxes, and then out to your 2 amps.
There you go.
But you do need to be aware of phase, polarity, and ground loop hum and all that stuff, which is a separate discussion. But
yeah. And that's that's one of the ways to do it. And there are mixes and all that sort of stuff as well that you can do that are really fun. But this is sort of the next level on from our gain stage conversations that we have and the wet dry conversations that we have. Okay, let's combine that and actually, the different overdrives and the different amp thing is so...
It's great.
It's really wonderful.
I think also it could be a much more cost-effective way of, if you're a bit umming and ahhing about the sound of your guitar amp, something that you could do here from the board level is pretty massive, actually.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Really fun.
Nice. Well done,
Really
mate.
fun.
That was good fun. That was some of the most fun tones we've had.
I concur.
Playable.
Yeah.
Really felt good.
The highlight for me was the TS9 ODR-1 with that. It's just like...
It sounded like a Strat, but all the... We won't go over it again.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. A massive thank you to all of our patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it.
Yes. Did you say go to that pedal show store?
I haven't said go to that pedal
please
store.
go to
but
that
it's
pedal show
important.
store. Buy yourself a t-shirt or some other merch thing. It's the primary way we fund this show, along with Patreon. And it really helps us keep doing what we do, keeps the lights on and all that. Please also subscribe, click the button, doesn't cost you anything, it's super easy, and it really does help us be more visible on our tube.
Indeed. Massive thank you to our preferred retailers in the UK and Europe.
Anderton's Muzak of Guildford in Surrey.
And in Brisbane, Australia.
Would be pedal of Empireshire.
Very good. So there we go. I'll see you on Monday for viewers, comments and questions. Have a fantastic weekend and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.